Most founders think the deal is won or lost in the Q&A. They replay the conversation, they think about the question they stumbled on, they think about the number they couldn't defend, or even the moment the room went a little bit quiet. And they walk away thinking, if I just answered that better, things could have gone differently. What they don't know is the publisher had already mentally moved on before they'd even got to that section of the pitch. Today, I want to show you 3 specific moments in the pitch deck where you lose the room. And you usually have no idea it's happening because by the time the meeting's gone wrong, everyone's pretended it hasn't happened. Let me start with the thing that happens on slide number 2. Or maybe slide number 1, depending on how your deck is structured. Most decks open with what the game is. Here's a title. Here's the genre, here's a screenshot or some concept art. And that's all fine, you have to start somewhere after all. But on the second slide, the one that comes right after, is usually where most founders and leaders make their first mistake. That mistake is answering a question which hasn't been asked by the publisher yet. I've seen all sorts of slide in this position, everything from the team makeup to the roadmap to the market fit. But the problem with that is the publisher sat in the room has no idea what your game is at this point. So they're sat there whilst you're explaining, Bob does the marketing or Jeff does the programming or here's our roadmap for 12 months. They're still sat there thinking, why are you talking to me about your team or your market fit? I don't know what your game is yet. And the reason this matters is because a pitch deck is not a document, it's a story. And every story has a sequence, and you have to flow through the story from beginning to end so people understand and follow the narrative. The sequence that works, and the one that I've seen time and time again as a successful pitch to publishers, starts off with this. What is the project? Why does it matter? Why are you the team to make it? What do you need? And what does success look like? In that order. When that sequence breaks down and you've jumped ahead maybe to the wrong slide and you're starting to tell the publisher, this is what we need, but they don't really care about the project yet, that's when you start to lose the meeting. It starts traveling away from you, and that's what leads to rejections most of the time. The second point I'm going to raise to you, a very common problem I see in pitch decks, is less about structure and more about clarity. The team making the pitch deck spend so much time looking at it, absorbing it, and spending time around the game. Maybe even they're making the game themselves. So they live with the project for months, maybe even years up until this point. They know every detail. They know what makes the project super special. And when they're writing the deck, all of this is in their heads. They know it, so they don't write it down. They assume things are obvious because it's in their head. They know it. They've known it for years potentially. So they don't write it down. So when they come to write the description of the game, it sounds super vague. Have you ever heard a description like a narrative-driven experience that subverts genre expectations with a handcrafted world and emergent systems? To them, that means a lot because they know what emergent systems they're putting in the game. They know how much they've built and how much that has been handcrafted. But to a publisher reading that code, that is just fluff. Because you have to remember, a publisher is going to read a lot of pitch decks. Every single month they read so many. And that line there can be attributed to hundreds of different video games. So if you write that for yours, probably other people wrote that same month to that publisher. They need to know exactly what that unique thing is that you've got in your brain, put that on the pitch deck. You have to go back to basics a little bit. You have to think about somebody who's never played your game. What do they want to know? And this can sound super, super obvious, but it's tough when you're close to it because you're thinking about this every day and you have all the knowledge. But the things they actually want to know is, what do I actually do in this game? How does that make me feel? Those 2 questions, simple. If your deck doesn't answer those 2 questions in the first 2 slides maybe, then you're asking the publisher to do extra work. You're asking them to work out what you mean by emergent systems. And if a publisher's got 100 pitches that month, they're probably not going to spend the time to work out your meaning on your one pitch. So a really good test for this, the one I use all the time, is you find somebody who's never heard of the project before. You read them your 2-sentence pitch, and then you get them to tell you what they think the game is. Because if they can't get relatively close to what your game actually is, That means your deck has a clarity problem. And clarity problems are actually a good thing to have because it means the vision's good, it means the quality is good. Clarity, that's something very solvable. Moving on to the third moment, and this one surprises founders the most when I talk to them about it. It's the moment they reveal their ask. There's an assumption that the slide that talks about money and a justification is just that. That's what we're here for. Here's the number, here's the justification. You either will or you won't. But this slide is actually doing so much more than that. It's signaling to the publisher whether you understand your project's own market. It's also signaling whether you understand the cost of development. And finally, it's signaling whether you can be trusted with money or not. Underpitching here can be just as damaging as overpitching, because if you're asking for a number too small compared to the scope of your game, the publisher doesn't think you're being modest or that you're gonna work for peanuts. They know how much it's gonna cost, and they think that you don't know how much it's gonna cost. And on the flip side of that, overpitching on your budget, if you're asking for a number too large for the stage you're at, before you've proven the concept, before you built your vertical slice, you're asking them to take a risk on a project that hasn't really earned the right. Most think the budget is just a budgeting skill, but it's more of a calibration. You have to perfectly articulate the budget. The calibration of the ask is slightly different to the skill of budgeting. You can have a perfectly accurate budget for the people you have, but that number can be wrong because it's not necessarily about what the game costs to make when you pitch it. It's about the credibility given where the project is, what team you have, and all the different factors that come in the pitch as a whole. And that's the hardest part of the pitch, in my opinion. You can do the perfect budget, everybody's salaries lined up perfectly, you know exactly how much it's going to cost to finish this game, exactly on the date you want it to do it, but you need to be able to see the way the publisher also sees it. How does that number sit relatively to the deck? Does it feel proportionate? Does this feel like a team that knows what they're doing and can achieve that date? So there you have it, the 3 moments in a pitch deck that ruin most pitches, honestly. Narrative logic, clarity, and ask calibration. Most decks have at least one of these as a problem. A lot of decks unfortunately have all 3 as a problem. The good news is none of these are related to how good the game is. They're about the deck itself not communicating things clearly enough. And that's a very different and a good problem to have. If you're heading into publisher conversations soon, or if you've had conversations that didn't quite go to plan, drop that in the comments or feel free to reach out to me. We can talk about that. Maybe your deck had some of these issues. Let me know. Thank you all for watching this video. I'll be back in a couple weeks with my next one, so I'll catch you there.